I am definitely going to hell for this. I am just certain of it. Well, good
Nope.
evening to the midnight hour.
Well, I call this order of the meeting of the Midnight Society open.
You are certainly going to regret this. I'm just going to let you listen in on this as I read it to you. Just, just so you can just so we can get a real, pure reaction to it. Clockwork, your time is up. A little girl sat in her room. Her messy brown hair were put into little pigtails as her hazel eyes stared at the door. She hugged her stuffed giraffe close to her little body and listened closely to the loud yells of her father and mother. I never should have had any damned kids, screamed a loud, deep voice. All they do is make messes, complain, draw on the walls. He was cut off by the high-angered yell of the girl's mother. They're children, David. They don't know any better. Oh, fuck me, Mary Beth. I don't want to hear your bullshit excuses. I just about had enough of them. And what do you plan to do about it? The girl heard loud footsteps coming towards her room, and she hugged her giraffe close. The door was violently opened, and in the doorway stood her large, angry, overweight father. In one of his meaty hands he held a large textbook. David, stop it! Screamed her mother. But the father ignored his wife's bleating cries. He grabbed the little girl by the collar, and she screamed and kicked, trembling and shaking in fear. The girl's father harshly held up the textbook. This is for drawing on my fucking walls, you little bitch.
So let me guess. Some emo, edgy teenager wrote a fucking Stephen King fanfic.
Maybe, but let's continue. Hold your judgment until after it, okay? Years later, the little girl, known as Natalie, was now 9 years old. Going through the stage of puberty, she was a natural little chubby. Like the usual, she sat in her room watching television. Her dad was ranting on about some economic crap that she really could give less a shit about as he munched on some popcorn. She was also currently drawing a picture. There was a bit of gore in it, but strangely she really liked drawing blood. It gave her some weird satisfaction. Other than that, multitasking was no problem. It became apparent at her young age, after having to do so much hard work and labor, that she was able to do so many things. Drawing ended up being her talent and passion, her way of escaping from reality whenever something bad would rear his ugly head and peered in, or when she was simply bored. She suddenly heard the closing of her door and looked to the left. Pausing on munching her popcorn, there stood her brother Lucas, 14 years old. What is it? She could still hear her father's yelling from outside the door. Dad scaring you? He let out a chuckle. No way, I think we're both used to his yelling by now. There was a long pause. So why are you in here? He seemed to play with his sleeve slightly and twitched a bit. I have to ask you something. He trained his eyes on her as she frowned slightly, growing impatient with her brother interrupting her moving and drawing. What? He moved a little closer. You said you wanted to be cool and grow up like a teenager, right? She nodded, slightly brightened up. Well, I have an offer. Just spit it out, you dimwit. You know what guys and girls do together sometimes, right? The next day of school, Natalie did not say a word. She did not speak for the whole day. She didn't have anyone to speak to anyways. Nobody can know. Nobody should know.
And so she sits on her bench and listens to Linkin Park only.
And so nobody would know Her teacher would pick up a few of her puzzled expressions, but she dismissed it, as if she did not understand the lesson. Natalie also felt as if she was in severe pain. She had no idea it could hurt. Feeling scared, she walked home and silently went to her room, but later in the day, she was once again greeted by her brother. Nobody would know. At school, she finally decided to tell someone. Even though they weren't her friends, she felt she had to. She walked up to the group of girls she would occasionally see in the hallway. They looked like nice girls, and them and Natalie had occasionally talked before. Hey, Mia! The ginger girl, who named Mia, looked over at Natalie, having a straight face. Yeah? I really need to talk to you about something. It's been going on for a while, you and your friends, and I feel like you're the only people I could trust. Mia and her friend seems to pull little smirks, but only for a moment. But little did Natalie know that they were hungry for gossip. What can you tell us? You can trust us. So what's up? One day later was all it took. She had been getting constant remarks on social networking sites like Facebook. One time, someone even called her a whore. Not to mention they had lunch, and it ended up getting in her hair. It was going to be the least of her problems, but Natalie, being only 9, could not help but be greatly upset at this fact. She did not cut, though. She did not peep. She never said a word about it. As you may recall, so far in this journey, she had kept everything aside. Supposed it was for the better. She wouldn't let any pain get in the best of her. Now it's 3 a.m., and it's a school night. Her mother was going to kill her. The girl, still Natalie, now 16 years old. She was productive in high school, close to honor roll, and we spell it R-O-L-E. For once, she felt calm and happy. Though, like the usual, she would occasionally become a hermit in her room, hiding away from her dad, who still liked to constantly yell and babbly, well, I don't know why, but baby about the economy, the money, the politics, all of that bullshit that she was flat out tired of hearing. Her eyes started to feel heavy. She had an assignment to work on, but that was no longer important. All that was on her mind was sleep. So she closed her laptop, and after her eyes adjusted to darkness slightly, she saw her old, worn-down stuffed giraffe in the corner. She stared at it in complete and utter silence, memories passing through her mind, and she felt tears coming to her eyes. Quickly, though, she blinked and back. No more breaking, she thought to herself. She continued to stare at it. What the fuck are you looking at? She said to the stuffed object. It just stared back with soft, black beady eyes. She shook her head and stood up. She looked down sadly at the little toy animal and gently picked it up in her arms, cradled it, and spoke softly. I'm sorry. Some tears ran down her face. She pet its rough, soft fur softly. Short fur, softly, as she lied in her bed. She then slowly went to sleep. She was woken up by the angry growls of her mother. She tiredly opened one of her eyes. I can't believe I forgot to put that laptop away. You were up on it all night, weren't you? Natalie sighed and pressed her face deeper into the pillow, hugging her giraffe closer. Her mother sighed and walked out. Natalie then took a shower, brushed her teeth, ate some breakfast, and got dressed, putting on a gray, probably blue hoodie, fur on the inside and the hood. Not her favorite, but it was the one she could just wear, due to some others being in the wash. She also put on black jeans, thin fashionable boots, and finally went downstairs to get driven to school. Oh, this spelling is atrocious. She hopped in a car. Her mother sped off towards the school. On the way there, because she didn't sleep, she put her head against the window of the car and drifted off. Her dreams, maybe nightmares I should say, started off with her physical abuse as a child. and the sexual abuse of her own brother Lucas, lasting for 4 years before she had the guts to turn him off. She didn't twitch and cringe in her sleep, but her mother took no notice. Mother never took notice. She was then awoken by the sound of her mother. "We're here." Having an annoyed tone, most likely from sleeping in the car, she looked at the large sign, and the school sign read, Walkerville Collegiate Institute for the Creative Fine Arts. She sighed tiredly and stepped out, putting her backpack on her shoulder. "See ya," she proclaimed, closing the car door. She walked into the school, chatted with a couple of friends, until she went up to her locker on the 3rd floor. She grabbed her books, and before 5 minutes of time was over, ran to class. Her English teacher annoyingly put her hand on Natalie's desk. "Where's your assignment, Miss Olette?" "I forgot it at home. Sorry, Miss Home Nuke." She growled and stood. "Your time is up, Miss Olette. Don't disappoint me." Natalie seemed puzzled by the thought for a moment. She didn't know why, but the words seemed to melt through her. She just simply ignored it and went back to listening to the lesson, falling asleep not too long afterwards, of course. Later that day, she was heading to her locker for 4th period. Her boyfriend, Chris, comes up to her. "Talk to me after school, alright?" She smiled, lovingly, to talk to Chris. Strangely, she didn't suspect anything. He was a sweet guy to her. During French class, she dared not to pay attention. Instead, she doodled things she loved to draw. Blood, gore, people being stabbed, knives, macabre things. Other people would say it was pretty dark, but she saw nothing wrong with it. For a strange reason, it felt normal. "Miss Olette?" She quickly covered her doodle on paper and looked up at her French teacher, trying to hide fear. Yes, le Levasseur? Or Mr. Levasseur?" He gestured for her to move her arm with a slight turn of his head. "Show me your work." She hesitantly moved her arm to show the picture of someone getting stabbed by an insane man. The teachers...
So, this really is a fucking
edgy.
creepypasta drawn by an emo high schooler.
Probably. Anyways, the teacher stood, puzzled, looked at her slightly. She smiled nervously. "Erase that and get started on your work," he said in a calm voice. He walked away, and she sighed and began to erase the picture. "And Miss Olette?" She looked at him slightly. "Your time is almost up on getting your work done. I suggest do it now." She growled at the remark. Time always seemed to be against her. As far as she could care, time can go fuck itself. After class, she walked out of the school to find her boyfriend standing near the fence on the sidewalk. She smiled and walked over, hoping her day could at least be cheered up by him, but as she walked closer, her smile faded. He wasn't smiling back. "What the hell are you eating?"
I just drank some soda lately.
Ugh. Well, I can't really blame you. I ended up finding out that the store that I went to the store today. Classic Coke bottles. Glass, too.
Oh, are you talking about one of those Mexican Coca-Colas?
It seems so, because it's mostly in Spanish.
Yeah, it's Mexican Coca-Cola. Everybody says it's good.
It was.
Yeah. Oh.
Chris, what's wrong? What did you want to talk with me about? He sighed and said, "Natalie, I think it's time that we should start seeing other people." Her heart broke. "Well, why?" He gave her a bit of a stern look. "Your mindset, your drawings, they just creep me out. I think there's really something wrong with you. The saddest part is, why haven't you told me you were acting like this? It makes me feel irresponsible. I just can't do it anymore. I'm sorry." And he walked away. Feels like a fucking high school movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just feels like something out of fucking fanfics.net.
Natalie slammed her hands in the bathroom counter at home, stared at herself in the mirror, her eye twitching. I won't hurt myself like the others, I can stay strong. There was a needle and black thread in her hand. It's pointless. It doesn't help.
Wait. Needle and black thread?
Yep.
Go on.
It's pointless. It doesn't help. Some weird sensation was pulling at her subconscious. She started to chuckle slightly. I'm doing it because I want to. She held up the needle with thread on the end of it, and she smirked widely. Time's up. Piece after piece, cut after cut. Even though the excruciating pain was going through her, she didn't whine. No whimper, no cry, no tears to shed. She just smiled. Blood leaked from the pieces and made a low dripping noise into the sinking counter. When she was finished, she stood back and admired her handiwork, striking the horrendous stitches on the sides of her mouth that spread into now a wider smile. She felt the warm, wet blood on her fingers and licked it gently, consuming the metallic taste, the liquid in pure ecstasy. She stopped when she saw her mother's reflection in the mirror behind her and sharply turned around. Her mother's wide eyes and pale face. She looked at her fingers, seeing the blood. Now she felt the pain and she started to cry. Uh-huh. She never felt so confused. What just happened? Bunny, we were relying on you. Mother now scheduled therapy for her. Natalie had not only had not gotten rid of the stitches, fearing how much pain it would bring. So now she relied on a therapist. She made sure her hood was up, as to not let anyone see. She sat down on an uncomfortable leather seat and stared at the blonde woman across from her in silence. Your name's Natalie, isn't it? I'm Deborah, and I'm here to help. Tell me, what has been your problems lately? Natalie stared. Time's been my problem. Deborah gave her a confused look. What about time, dear? Natalie's hands roughly gripped the leather of the seat. Everything makes you live through it, slowly progressing through life, being controlled by society, only to be tortured for seemingly no end, until you find to no longer have a purpose. A vicious cycle. Time doesn't end, doesn't slow down, doesn't speed up. Violent, makes you live through the torture over and over again, unable to fast forward away from it. Natalie really had no idea what she had just said. Felt like she wasn't herself anymore. Could it be because of all the things she kept contained? Impossible. But for a strange reason, she liked it. The therapist leaned closer. Sweetheart, I want you to tell me what's happening to you. Natalie stared with a long pause. She then smirked slightly. Pieces of her stitches began slightly opened up again. Why don't you tell me, Blondie? You're the expert. Deborah seemed to have a bit of an annoyed look. I can't help unless you tell me what's wrong. Her fingers started to tear into the leather seat. Natalie isn't here anymore. Oh, sorry. Just screams fucking exorcist.
Is that the end?
Not yet. Not by a long shot, man.
How long is this?
It's quite a while. I think we're at the halfway point. With that, Deborah's eyes widened. She got up. I'll be right back. So stay here. She walked out, leaving Natalie alone. Maybe if she had done something at this point, she wouldn't have come to be what she is today. Maybe more people would be alive, or maybe she would be sane again. As much as I would love to, I would admit that she got up from the chair and stopped this all from happening. But I'm obliged to give you the horrid truth, as Natalie didn't move. She sat perfectly still, silent, calm in that chair. After a while of waiting and a little bit of impatience, her parents walked in. She stood, happy to go. She noticed her parents' expressions. Even her father had a strange, saddened look on his face. The confusion grew. No words were said, though. She just simply followed them to the car. On the way she thought she was going back home, she started to drift off. She didn't strangely hear a dark voice speaking within her dream, sounding like herself, echoing in eternal blackness, saying, "Her time is up." She shot awake, beads, sweat rolling down her face. She wasn't at home anymore. She wasn't even in the car. Instead, she was in a white bed, in a white room. She looked to her side, seeing as she was hooked up to a heart monitor. She wanted to get up, but she realized she was bonded down. She panicked and struggled, paused to hear a door to her left open. A man in a white shirt looked at her, her hands behind her back, his hands behind his back. Looked like one of those cliche doctors you would find on a scientific lab. She paid full attention as the scientist started to speak. "You must be very confused, I can imagine, but I'm letting you know we're only here to help you. You see, your parents ended up agreeing to sign a contract to give you mental drugs to hopefully help your state of mind." She opened her mouth, but it was silenced. You don't need to worry. You'll be back to normal just in time. Just try to relax." He walked over, tried to skittishly move away, but couldn't because of the bonds and leather straps around her wrists and legs. He took up a mask, put over her mouth and nose. She tried to get it off, but felt like she was starting to slip under the effect of the drugs. Her eyes slowly shut. She then woke up and couldn't comprehend the sight that she sees. She was being given multiple injections, some things that were rubbed on her skin. She felt woozy, but was completely aware of the surroundings. She was entering a rare state that some patients would go through while undergoing surgery. Able to see that they are being worked on. Able to feel pain. An active brain, but without a way to respond. Natalie, though, was able to. As her heart rate on a monitor started to speed up, the doctors took notice of this. They looked at her with her opened eyes. One of the doctors yelled at another. In her strange state, she couldn't make out what they were saying, but now she felt a rush of adrenaline. She started to slip through the bonds, shaking violently. One of the doctors was going to hold her down, but was suddenly hesitant in doing so. All three doctors present backed away. She sat on the edge of the bed, ripped off the mask and tube from the arm. She got up. She started to stumble, breathing hitched, vision blurry. She could make out herself giving off a couple of insane chuckles, but now she felt a searing pain in her chest, gripping where her heart would supposedly be, and dropped to her knees. She coughed up blood as she fell to the floor, blacking out. She woke up slowly, groggy, back in bed, the doctor sitting beside the bed. Something went horribly wrong. She didn't know why, but there was a tremendous amount of hatred towards the doctor. He took notice. He looked away. "You know, you weren't supposed to wake up while we were giving you the doses for your mental state. We're not sure how it affected you, but we have a feeling we're going to find out." He took out a small mirror, not looking at her. "It had a strange effect on your appearance." She looked at herself in the small mirror that the doctors produced. Her eyes widened. Speaking of, her eyes of hers went from hazel to green. She noticed she still had stitches in her mouth. Some reason though, she just couldn't feel anything but happy. The heart rate decreased. A little low chuckle. The doctor looked shocked, seeing as she was suddenly already standing over him. "Doctor," she said, chuckling. The doc trembled slightly, pressing a button underneath the monitor. "Yeah?" "Your time is up." A loud scream was heard over the halls of the alleged hospital. Two security guards rushed through the room, kicking the door open. Blood was the first thing they saw. On the walls, bed, floor, hell, even the ceiling. Natalie took this doctor, strapped him to this bed, and completely snapped his spine, as the bed was bent into almost a sandwich, likely from adjustments someone could make to it. As blood poured from his eyes, nose, and mouth, and just about every orifice of his body, there in the corner was Natalie, happily drawing gruesome pictures on the wall in blood, with the phrase, "Your time is up." She turned to look at the security guards with a wide, crazy grin across her face. "Hello, friends. Would you like to play?"
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Stop it! That ruined the atmosphere. Nut. Why did you guilt me into this? On second thought, it's my fault, really.
I don't know. Wait. No, continue on.
At this point, the guards pulled out their guns. She charged at them, being able to dodge their bullets. She took a large knife from a sheath on his pocket, slashed it right across the waist.
Wait. His pocket? A police guard?
Security guard.
A security guard carries a knife? What?
I guess so.
What the? Oh.
Because I guess a service revolver just doesn't cut it.
I thought they carry like fucking baseball batons, whatever.
Must be one of those different kinds of hospitals.
It must be the Scottish ones. Or the Switzerland.
Anyway, she took that knife and slashed it right across his waistline. Blood and organs flooded out as he dropped. She inhaled deeply, loving that damp stench of death. The other shook with fear.
Nothing.
The other shook with fear and dropped his gun. She slowly walked up to him, placed the tip of the knife at his chest. "Your time is up," she said, as she slowly slid the knife down to his chest, all the way to the end of the gut. It was his organs' turn to spill onto the floor. Now Natalie's mother, meanwhile, was sleeping at home in her bedroom next to her husband. Continuity. What is it? She awoke to the sound of knocking on the door of the house. She groggily got up, walked out of the bedroom, straight to the front door. It was now pouring outside, with thunder booming in the distance. As she opened up the door, she paused.
And then a skeleton popped out.
Outside, there was a faint sound of insane laughter. Rain and thunder was suddenly quiet. The mother pressed her ear against the door and listened closely. "Hello, Mother." Natalie burst through, wielding knives in hand. 2 now. Her mother was stumbling back as she hit her head against a coat rack with a hook.
Wait.
One of the hooks managed to break into her skull as she now bleeds violently from the back. She fell to the ground, paralyzed. Natalie towered over her, kneeling down to meet her mother's face, showing her 2 knives covered in a thick coat of blood. "I was suffering, Mother," she said as she ran the tip of the knife across her cheek, cutting it slightly. Natalie tilted Mother's head. "But you did nothing." All her mother could do was just shake and gasp like a fish on land. Natalie grabbed her mother and gently sat her down so her back was lying flat. She proceeded to sit on top of her, made a V cut on Mother's chest. Mother only gasped and shook, her breath starting to seem choked and gurgled. Natalie knew she didn't have much time left. She proceeded to forcibly open her chest cavity with a loud crack, reached in and grabbed her mother's heart as it slowly beats in her hand. Its pulses were growing dimmer and dimmer. She ripped it out completely now, blood spraying all over the face. She stared at her mother directly in the face as she slowly dies. "Sweet dream," she said. "Your time was up." She placed the heart back into her mother's mouth, patting her cheek softly. She wasn't done just yet. Now it's Natalie's father, who we decided to name David. David stirred awake, realizing his wife wasn't there. As his eyes adjust to the darkness, he sees Natalie standing by his bedside, smirking crazily with her green eyes glowing in the darkness. She is completely covered in blood, the scent unbearable, putting on a sad face. "Dear Mother's gone. I wonder who will get the money." Now she grabbed her father's forehead. "Oh well, that's what you really cared about anyway. Money." Father, however, was quite a fighter. Springing up, grabbed her by the neck, and tossed her to the ground. He tried to stomp on her chest until she coughed up blood as he stared down at her.
What the fuck?
"Doesn't it feel good, Daddy?" "After all, you never seemed to mind doing it all those years ago, didn't you?" He narrowed his eyes. "Well, you're not my daughter anyway." A wider smirk spread across her face. She looked at him with her glowing eyes, while she just coughs up more blood. "Of course not. I'm not." She then tripped him. He fell hard to the floor. She got up with knives in hand. "You see, the bigger they are, the harder they fall." As he lay there winded, she grabbed a pillow and stuffed it in his face, stomping on it harder and harder. Loud, crackling noises can be heard. As she pulled the pillow away, his face was gruesomely mutilated. He was making muffled noises, crying in pain. "What's the matter, Daddy? Pain too much for you?" She stabbed both her knives into his stomach, leaving them there for now. as she ripped off one of the large, heavy wooden poles from the bed, sinking it down on his legs, and grabbing the knives. "I'm gonna need these," she cuckolded. She sat on the pole, laid between his legs. She started to walk back while sitting down. The weight of the body from the pole slowly squeezed his innards up through the body. He gags, blood pouring from the mouth. His breath was silenced. She hit a bit of a snag. Come on, she snarled as she forced herself to walk back with more weight. Now his organs burst out of the mouth. The nasty gore piled up on the floor on the sides of her face. She nodded to the deceased corpse. She then walked out. "Time's up, Daddy." Now would be the favorite part. She quietly snuck down to Brother's room, opening the door. As blood dripped from her knife, making a low tapping sound as the droplets hit the hard wood, she looked. Brother wasn't in bed. Must be hiding somewhere. She grinned. "Oh, dear brother, come on." She started to walk inside. "All I wanted to do was have a little fun." As she stepped in more, she listened closely for some sounds. Breathing, movement, anything. She even sniffed the air for putrid scent. Ooh, excuse me. The closer she listened, she finally noticed something. A faint breathing. Whack! She fell to the ground, trembling, as her brother was behind her with a bloodied baseball bat. He glared down in anger, panting in rage. She tried to slowly get up. However, he hit her again, and again, and again. "Mother always did like you best, bitch!" He hit her hard one last time before taking a breath. She was bleeding heavily. Green eyes drooped, glowing faintly in the darkness. She felt a little weak. Looked close up at the ceiling. She recalled the days she had spent in here, being tortured, having to go through it for 4 years, looking at the same damn ceiling. That sent a sudden rush of energy back, and she started to stand, laughing insanely. "I am not gonna read that. I've been having a headache for a while, so fuck it." Her brother wanted to hit her again, but he used both knives to block it. And at a strange mix of upper and lower case, she screamed, "You're going to hell, brother!" With a large push, she sent her brother flying to the bed. He hit his head against the wall and growled angrily, about to lunge at her. She then took the 2 knives, stabbed his arms, pinning him to the wall. He screamed as he struggled. "Well, let's see what we can use here." She started to walk around the room and smirked, seeing a simple butter knife on his bedside. I wonder how that got there. She picked it up and walked over to him. "Well, they say the eyes are the softest organs." She slowly lit the knife. Soft as butter. He looked in horror as he tried to get away. She started to dig his eyes out. He shrieked loudly. She tied then a cloth around his mouth. Now, we can't have you waking the neighbors." Now he can't see. The pain unbearable, as blood leaked violently from his eye sockets. He would cry, but it's not possible with this condition, now can it? She dug around, picked up a pair of scissors, walked over to him, crawling over him. "You need to cut a little loose, brother." She took the scissors to his stomach. and cried out in muffled pain. Well, he cried out in muffled pain, I'm sorry. She treated him like arts and crafts, cutting through his skin like paper. Are you even listening? You just sound so silent.
Oh, I am listening, yeah.
Just let me know, man.
Sorry. Because... Wait, are you done with that, or...
Not yet.
God damn, how many words are in this?
Oh, we're almost there.
All I heard was blood, gore, and death on parents, and fanfic girl turning into Jeff the Killer, whatever.
Esque. Anyway, she took the scissors to the gut. He cried out in a muffled scream of pain. She started to treat him like an arts and crafts project, cutting through his skin like paper. She lifted up his large intestine and smirked wickedly. You know what I love? Macaroni art. A little too big on the plate, though, she said as she cuts the intestine into sections. She could hear her brother foaming at the mouth with blood. He had to swallow blood back, because of the cloth around his mouth. Does it taste good? She licked his blood off her fingers. I know, I like it. He let out another muffled scream. She went down to his toes and started cracking them and ripping them off, one by one. After a while, the screams grew futile, throat raw and bloody. She decided to work on his fingers, snapping them, ripping them off. The gurgling became louder as he squirmed. He began to choke on his own blood. She decided to pull the cloth to let blood pour from his mouth. She turned his head to the side as he violently vomited. There, brother. Eat this and feel better. She took one of his fingers into his mouth, making it jam into his throat. He choked. Life escapes from his body. Your time is up. This girl named Natalie, walked into her own room, dripping blood. Off to the corner she saw it, her stuffed giraffe. She knelt down and stared at it. Without a word, she stood back up and walked to the bathroom. Staring at herself covered in blood, she heard a faint ticking noises. She looked down and saw an odd pocket watch. She stared at its hands as it slowly turns, listening to the ticking for what could be seen as an eternity. She took one of the knives, blood dripping, onto the counter. She took the pocket knife, disassembled the watch until it was only the small clock. Time makes you live through the tortures, he said, as she brings the knife to her eye, slowly progressing through life, being controlled by society. She started to slowly dig into her eye as the vision in her left eye grew blurry and red, until you find you no longer have a purpose. She felt like her eye was starting to relent from the socket as blood poured in the sink. A vicious cycle. She felt it dangle, a sharp pain where it was connecting to her head. It doesn't speed up. It doesn't slow down. It's violent. She grabbed at the cord, tore it, the eye falling into the sink. It makes you live through the torture over and over again. She started to place the clock in her eye, unable to fast forward away from it. Squishing can be heard as drips of blood dripped into the sink until it seemed like the clock managed to fit itself perfectly in her socket. She then called herself Clockwork. This young 16-year-old girl, who used to be Natalie, decided to walk away after she set her house on fire, flames engulfing everything. Inside, her giraffe slowly burned, along with the corpses of her family. Some say she continued to live on, carrying that insanity with her, leaving many dead, saying that she decided when time comes to an end. The only way to tell of her presence, if you cuddled closely in the covers at night, sleeping soundly. In the darkness, she would watch you, determining. You would hear her ticking, and you will see in a green flash of that clock eye of hers. If she's there, you would know your time is up. The end! Thoughts? Jazz? Did you die? Did Clockwork took your life? Was it your time? I guess your time was up.